Good evening, and how are you? And welcome to Health Exposure. I'm your host, Kurt Hill. And today we have a real good show for you with Deborah Arneson. Health Exposure, let's just tell you a little bit about it, is a show that deals with alternative medicine. That's massage, energy work, nutrition, and many things that deal with helping you from a alternative medical standpoint of view. But enough of that. There are many, many questions, and many of you have wanted to know about this particular subject, and we have a very delightful guest on today, which is Deborah Arneson. Hi, Deborah. How are you?
I'm great, Kurt.
As always, it's so good to have you on this show.
Thanks.
And I'm even excited about this one, The Zone.
Yes, we're going to balance your body chemistry.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
All right, I guess the first question is, how do you do that?
Well, to balance your body chemistry, you really have to know that there's a relationship between food groups, what we call the macronutrient food groups, and that would be proteins is one, carbohydrates is the second one, and the third one is fats and oils. But there are classifications or sub-classifications within each of those that qualify as the best body balancing foods or not so good body balancing foods.
Oh, I see.
Right.
All right, so this would be a good time to say, so tell us about proteins, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
I remember a show like that we did. All right, good, bad, and ugly proteins. What
Right.
about that?
Well, the good proteins are the leanest proteins, and those would be proteins that are found from, come from fish and chicken without the skin, white meat, are very lean cuts of beef or lean cuts of pork, like our loin cuts. You could use protein sources as beans and legumes, of course. Those would be the good alternatives. The not so good or the bad proteins are the proteins that are like the fattier proteins that are cheeses and low-cut beefs like hamburgers and, our pork that isn't a tenderloin cut or ham, things like that. And then the really bad are the highly processed, really saturated fatty proteins, like our bacons and our sausages and pepperonis and nitrate-laden luncheon meats and things like that.
What about hamburgers that have done penance? Like, I'm trying to be very good now. So
They're still bad.
They're still bad, okay.
Yes, unless they're the loin cut.
So actually, you're telling us that there's some that are worse than others and some that are better than others altogether.
Right, and protein that comes from fish sources are the best.
Okay.
Simply because they're the leanest. And if you know anything about Buddhism, or there's a belief that you become very much like the primary animal that you consume or the protein you consume the most of. So if you consume a lot of fish, you're very fluid and agile. A lot of your aches go away. If you consume chicken, you become very arthritic. If you consume beef, you become very bull-like and
that accounts for my latest walk. I was moving a little out.
Neck out? Trucking.
So carbohydrates. Tell us a little bit about the carbohydrates and what are the fat-burning carbs and what are the fast-storing carbs?
Okay, that's a good question. Carbohydrates are really broad. There's a very broad spectrum of carbohydrates in the world, and what people need to know is that there are what we call the fat-burning, as you put it, and the fat-storing. And the fat-burning carbohydrates have what we call low glycemic index. And the glycemic index of a food is simply how much sugar does that food contain naturally, within its bonds, and therefore how much insulin does it release. Insulin is either a fat burner or a fat storer. So the fat-burning carbohydrates are vegetables, of course, and are fruits, but not including carrots, which are very high in sugar, and bananas, which are very high in sugar.
Oh, really?
Yes. Mangoes and papayas and melons are a little bit higher in sugar, too. So those should be consumed with caution. And the bananas and the carrots, seldom if ever. And
that's good to know, because I know a lot of people will go into a health food store and order carrot juice and think that they're getting something very, very healthy, but you really have to be careful with the sugar content.
You do. I mean, on the glycemic index, which ranges from 0 to 100, Kurt, 100 is extremely high in simple sugars, or chain sugars, and 0 is very low. A carrot is like 82 on the glycemic index, and a banana is 93.
Oh, my goodness.
So they're quite high in sugar. Things like breads and pastas are in the 60s and 70s, so they're very high in sugar, and they're more the fat-storing carbohydrates. So the things that will store more fat happen to be our breads, our pastas, our bagels, a lot of our cereals that are processed, that are low in fiber high in sugar. And then our low-fat items, like the Entenmann's low-fat cookies and crackers and snacks and treats. And I see one of the people back there going, oh, no, I can't have my Entenmann's anymore. But, you know, if you're going to do low-fat, you're going to have high sugar. Otherwise, you wouldn't eat it. You know, there has to be something to replace the fat to make it appealing. So those are the doughboy carbohydrates. Those are the things that help you store more fat and produce more insulin when you eat them.
You know, you've been on the show a few times, and one of the calls I got recently, they said, one of the viewers, they said, every time she comes on the show, she has such a plethora of information, and you look like you're fascinated. Well, actually, I am. But the question was, does she keep all that in her head? They want to know where you keep all this. That's incredible. The things that you share.
It's in my head.
It's in your head. Right there.
It's because I love what I do.
Yes, and it comes out and it shows.
Yeah, thanks.
And we
Thank
learn
you.
so much, and we appreciate that. All right, I have some more questions for you. Tell us about fats and oils. What are the good? Here we go with the bad and the ugly again.
Well, I kind of coined that term, the good, the bad, the ugly. I like it. You know, it's better than saying fats are either good or bad, because there's another substrate group, and that, you know, subjective group are the really ugly things. And the ugly groups for proteins and for fats and for even carbohydrates are foods that are actually robbers. They go into the body and they stick you up like little banditos, and they take out all of your nourishment, all of your nutrients, your vitamins, your minerals, your zinc, your vitamin C, your selenium, all of the things that enhance the body's ability to fight and compete with environmental toxins. So the really ugly guys are not just benign. They're very adventuresome, they're very problematic for the system, and they really do rob, rape, and pillage the system of the nutrients we're trying to preserve and hold on to. So it's quite important to know that you should stay away from the uglies as much as possible, or make them a very rare incidence of, you know, or occasion upon eating.
Now, in your practice, you chart this out? Or that's
Yeah,
good.
sure.
That's interesting.
Sure, we give people lots of information. So you have, like, you go home with a little, you know, booklet filled with all kinds of good information. But coming to the fats, you know, there's been this huge fat war going on about oils and fats and what's good and what's bad. And, you know, the ADA still encourages people to eat things like margarine, which I do not. That's what I call one of the ugly fats, Kurt.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
loaded with hydrogenated fat. And we'll start with the uglies because they tend to be the most predominant in our food in this society. So the really ugly are hydrogenated oils, and those oils are very problematic because hydrogenation is a process, and I know you know this because we've talked about it, but it is a process that was created in the laboratory in creating transmission fluid from soybean oil. And the reason they used the hydrogenated process was simply because soybean oil being used for transmission fluid would become coagulated and unstable over long periods of time and high temperatures. So they took the saturated bonds out, they shoved in hydrogen atoms, and then they put nickel in behind it, which is a heavy metal. It's toxic to humans. And then they put a yellow dye in behind it for food products to make it look palatable or tasty. Because when you heat an oil to 400 degrees to break the molecular bond, it becomes as black can be, and you're not going to eat anything that's disgusting, charred looking. Disgusting. So, so we're not going to eat that.
No, we're not going to do that.
But you'll find hydrogenated oil or fats or partially hydrogenated oils in almost all of our food products that are in the center shelves in our grocery stores. And that would be cookies and crackers and cakes and mayonnaises and breads and muffins, you know, things like that. So, and dressings. If you see hydrogenated fat or partially hydrogenated fat, put it down. Don't even buy it. It simply allows the food to stay on the shelf for 2 weeks to 6 years without becoming rancid or rotten or losing its, you know, preserved quality. And if it's considered on a shelf for that length of time, there's nothing alive in that food.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Are we really that sanguine, that relaxed about these things you're talking about? Sounds very serious when you're talking in terms of transmission fluid and
Blah.
and all that sort of things.
Blah.
And we're eating this stuff, and we think
Yes.
we're healthy.
Well, it is interesting to denote that, you know, Americans have the highest incidence of cancer of any industrialized nation in the world.
I didn't realize that.
We do. And if you look at cancer in this country, a great deal of it has to do with your food choices. So it's important to become a savvy consumer and realize that there are good things for you, there are bad things for you, and there are really awful, you know, preservatives and additives and things like that in our food chain that you should not consume as a consumer. And it really does boil down to live, fresh is best.
I see.
You know, our soil in America is not the soil it used to be, Kurt. I mean, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, our soil was still somewhat depleted because we used so many different pesticides and sprays. Agribusiness is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's important to know that they have a pretty good stronghold in Washington. So as a consumer, you are ingesting these pesticides, these sprays, these residues, and these chemicals in massive quantities. You know, that's enough of a problem for your system to detoxify all that. It's really important that when you are able to put live foods in your body, you do, because you need the vitamins and minerals to compete with those toxins that are in our food chain, that are in our soil, in our water, in the air we breathe.
In the air we breathe.
Sure.
Massive.
So to continue with the good, bad, and uglies, the ugly are the hydrogenated. The good fats are found in avocados and in seeds and nuts. Raw is best. And the oils from those seeds and nuts in cold water fish and a little bit in legumes.
Oh, that's incredible. Deborah, let's say we're your clients. How do you impart this knowledge to them? What do you do? How do you, during the course of a day, talk in terms of energy while burning body fat and building muscle?
Well, you know, we start simply by sitting down with a person and explaining to them that they have a process that needs to be gone through. You know, in other words, when you're trying to heal the system, you first of all detoxify the system. So you try to get out as much of the garbage as you can. And during the process of detoxification, you re-inoculate at the same time, meaning we're shoving good nutrients and nourishment into the system, and you start out by doing that with whole foods and minerals. And then you go ahead and you re-inoculate, and then you restore. And restoration comes after the body is balanced and the chemistry is evened out. I mean, you are a chemical factory. Your body produces hormones. It makes those hormones from essential fatty acids, good oils, from seeds, nuts, and fish, and avocado and olives, and minerals, and your B vitamins. So you have to have all of the players present. So to balance your body chemistry takes probably, for a person who's relatively healthy, 6 weeks. You know, you feel notable differences within 2. And if you don't balance your body chemistry, then you come up with chronic problems like fatigue. Depression is very prevalent. I mean, something like, I think it's a quarter of all Americans are on Prozac or some antidepressant, which is really sad. You know, you're depressed 9 times out of 10 because your chemistry is upside down. I mean, I have people come in all the time and they're like, oh, I don't feel really good. You know, I'm really tired at the end of the day. I'm depressed. All I want to do is sleep. And within 2 weeks of giving live nutrients to their body's like, yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. You know, it's like really happy. It's just marvelous to
Deborah,
witness.
while sitting here, just listening to you, it makes me think of something, and that is, when these people come in and they're sitting down talking to you, and I'm sure you do a chart, and you realize the amount of toxic foods that they have in their bodies, how do you break it to them? I mean, isn't this frightening to people to know this?
I do a lot of charting, and it is. People are generally very overwhelmed. And what I do is I have people come in and fill out a log and show me what they typically eat in a day, and we break it into segments: carbohydrates, proteins, fats and oils, fruits, vegetables, and dairy. So they write it down, they show me the time of the day, I show them how many calories they've eaten and what percentage of their diet is coming from each of those categories. And 9 times out of 10, actually almost 10 times out of 10, people are consuming nothing but carbohydrates, which are dead foods. Anything processed like pastas and breads, unless they're whole grain, and your cereals and your bagels, you know, are dead. I mean, they throw a few fortified vitamins back in for good measure. You know, that doesn't count. I mean, a bread should be dense and thick and heavy. It should be very, very loaded with nutrients and vitamins and minerals. But if it's processed, they've taken all the good nutrients out. And the same with pasta.
So we're full but not nourished.
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Exactly. We're full but we are not nourished.
Huh.
And when you're not nourished, you crave. And normally you crave what? Sugar. What does sugar do? It's an anti-nutrient. It's a carbohydrate. It goes in the body, little bandito, little, you know, mask on, sticks you up, takes out all your other vitamins and minerals. And every day you're like, well, I need more nourishment. Let me have some more sugar. So you're pounding down sugar or empty calorie foods, and you're never satisfied. That sets you up for hypoglycemic swings, ups and down. So you end up like blood sugar goes up, blood sugar goes down, blood sugar goes up all day long. Moods go up and down with it. People are really happy, then they're really mean. Then they're really happy, then they're really mean. Not fun to be around. So if that sounds like you better look at your carbohydrate intake.
Kind of a nutrition tango, huh?
So that's the problem, is that people do consume way too many carbohydrates, and they consume dead carbohydrates to boot. And the way you balance your body chemistry, seriously, is to take carbohydrates out of your diet as much as you can. And when you do consume them, make sure they're whole and they're natural and they're packed with vitamins and minerals, like your legumes and your potatoes and your whole grain rices, you know, and your whole grain cereals and things like that.
I see. Thank you. This sounds very much like the Zone diet. So, in comparison with your approach in the Zone diet, what can you tell us?
Well, it was interesting because the Zone diet, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a diet that was actually stumbled upon by Dr. Barry Sears. And Dr. Barry Sears is a man who worked, he has a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. I mean, he's a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1982 or something for AZT, for AIDS.
Okay.
In the course of his curriculum and study with patients, as I understand it, he came across this diet. He was trying to balance body chemistries for these people. You know, just increase their immune response and help them to decrease body fat percentages while maintaining their muscle mass. So he found that when he took the garbage food out, the ugly groups, you know, for the most part, and put in an infusion of 30% protein, 30% fat, and 40% carbohydrate, that they developed increased T-cell responses. Their immune system just magnified 10%. And then they found that these people had increased energy and sense of well-being, and many of them went into remission. It was pretty amazing. So he said, I'm onto something here. So he actually took this particular percentage-based diet, the 40-30-30, and took it to Stanford and used it for 10 years on their athletes there, the ones who went to the Olympics. And they won something like 8 gold medals during the course of time that he had them on his protocol. They just performed better. They had peak optimal performance and, you know, just amazed everybody. So I had heard about him through a friend of mine who had read his book last year, and she said, you know, he sounds like he's doing a diet a lot like, you know, the recommendations you give to your clients. You should read this book. So I got his book. I thought, we'll read this book. And I tried to skim, you know, to the best part. Couldn't. It's really well written. It's called The Zone. And I said, you know, I like this guy. He agrees with me. So I was like, very cool. Because what I had done in my practice is I had taken people off of carbohydrates through the course of time just because people wouldn't lose weight on them. I just found that a lot of people were very sensitive. Their glycemic indexes were quite skewed based on the intake of carbohydrates. So I took them off of carbs, but I had people more on a 50% carb diet with, you know, measurable weight loss, and energy was always well improved upon within a couple weeks. But when you go 40-30-30 versus 50-25-25, what you have are people who just lean up really quick. So I was seeing people dropping twice as much body fat in half the time.
That's
and,
incredible.
I mean, the energy is quite good. It's very difficult for some people to subscribe to because it is just all fresh live foods.
That's incredible. I recently met a client of yours who was very proud and happy that he had lost 50 pounds or so since January, and he was very flexible, very happy. Was he on this diet also? It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. I was just very fascinated.
Well, it is pretty amazing. You find that when people, the good thing about balancing your proteins to fats to carbohydrates, and that's the trick. I mean, when you're doing an optimally biochemically balanced diet, what you will find is that you have to consume always a protein with a fat or an oil with a carbohydrate. And again, you want your protein to be the leanest type of protein, your carbohydrate to be a good healthy carbohydrate, preferably fruits or vegetables.
I see.
And your oil should come from those oils we talked about that are unsaturated. The avocado, the seeds, the nuts, the olives, things like that. So if in fact you consume those in balance with one another, you create an energy burn in the cells, and that energy burn helps you to move the system in such a manner that you will in fact increase output of muscle mass building and increase in fat burning to create more muscle mass.
I see.
So every time you eat those foods in balance with one another, you will find in fact that your body goes knock, knock, knock on the fat storage tank. Let me in and I want to borrow some fat. So it takes fat out and uses fat for metabolism, which is really important.
Okay.
If you don't use your fat for metabolism, you'll find that you can go ahead and go on any type of diet, but you don't really lose fat. You may lose muscle, but your fat percentage will not go down. What you see happening when you balance people out is their fat percentages drop dramatically.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And they start to see themselves as, a little svelte, a little more lean, and, you can start to see muscle definition, etc.
That's
Okay.
good, and they actually see it and they feel good. So is there more? Is there anything else you'd like to tell our listening audience or about what you do as far as an overview, or have you pretty much covered it? Or?
Well, you know, I think it's really important for people to have their diets accurately looked at or assessed. I mean, that's a really interesting overview. I mean, we offer seminars, you know, over at Nutrition Consultants, and these seminars are great because they give people, again, an overview on basic nutrition, mind-body balance connection, you know, thermogenesis, how to get your body to burn fat the most efficiently. And if you don't have that knowledge, you know, or a starting place to gain some of that knowledge, you don't know what to do. I mean, people come in all the time, Kurt, and I'm sure you see them in your practice. It's like, I work out 7 days a week. I can't lose fat. My body's not changing. Well, that means something's wrong with your diet, or something's wrong with your ability to create insulin to burn fat. So you need to find out what exactly is going on with your system.
So where do you give the seminars at your practice? How does one get in touch with you? What are the particulars?
They'll put the number up at the end of the show,
I see,
and they
okay.
can just call and, you know, come to the seminar, and that's a good place to start. I mean, there's some really good books out there. You know, we offer books, and
Do you
know,
do tapes or shows? Or
we have videotapes that we, you know, sell of the shows, and videotapes on nutrition information as well. So it's important just to take that first step. You know, when people think of diet, you know, we were talking today with one of my clients out in the suburbs, and she goes, you know, when I first heard about you, Deborah, she goes, oh, I don't need a diet. My diet's good. I can eat anything I want. She goes, but I felt like total caca. She goes, you know, she's 32 years old. All of her muscles ache. She goes, I've had back problems and neck problems. I've been going to a chiropractor, she said, for 7 years. The guy doesn't help me. I'm back there every week because I'm in such distress. She goes, I haven't been to my chiropractor in 2 months. She goes, I don't have a backache, a muscle ache. She goes, my energy has gone from a 2 to a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10. She said, my skin is beautiful. Look at my skin. She's like this. I'm like, yeah, you do. You glow. You look great. She goes, I've got 2 little girls. I'm a school teacher, and I'm a housewife. She goes, I'm busy.
Oh, that's great.
And she said, I feel fabulous. She said, so when I heard about you, I thought, I don't want a diet. She goes, but it's more than a diet. It really is. It's a lifestyle. And it's obtaining balance and balancing your
I like
body
that.
chemistry.
It's more than a diet. It's a lifestyle. So you're
Right.
dealing with the emotions also.
Right.
That's
well,
incredible.
It comes back to that old adage, you know, how much do you love yourself? You know, how much are you willing to invest in your life to take care of yourself? If you don't take time to invest in yourself a little bit and do some exploratory thinking, you know, and some, you know, getting rid of some of those preconceived ideas of what dieting is about. This isn't about dieting. This is about balancing your body chemistry. Assess it accurately. You know, find out what's going on emotionally. You know, work on those issues too. I mean, work with somebody who's a body worker, you know, to help balance you out and make sure that you're taking time to be touched and be taken care of. And then work on your diet. I mean, it's a process. That's
I see.
it's like our life. It's a process. This isn't going to happen overnight. You know, some people are very diligent and they do it in a week or two, but some people cannot.
I know we're going to get a question on this, so I'll do it quickly because I can see my signals. But how long does this seminar last? I mean, is it a week, 4 weeks?
The seminar, you can do it in either one seminar, you know, partitions, or you can do it, it's a 3-part series. So if you come to the 3-part series, you get everything. You talk about thermogenesis, which is helping your body, assisting it in burning fat. It's basic ABCs of nutrition and learning how to live in the zone and shop and, you know, efficiently and cook efficiently, and also visualization therapy and stress reduction techniques. So it's a real good overview encompassing your whole life.
Encompassing your whole
Yeah,
life.
I mean, who doesn't have stress? You don't have stress, do you?
No, absolutely not. I'm still trying to figure out the transmission fluid that's
Yeah.
going. I should have had a V8 engine. No.
Well, it's important to know that you can do like all the biofeedback and all the stress reduction techniques in the world, but if your body chemistry is upside down, you're always swimming upstream against the current, which is not what you want to do.
I see.
So you have to have that triangle, body, mind, spirit. You know, it all has to be functioning well and healthfully together.
Deborah, you know, again and again, what I think you keep reiterating is that the diet is so important. And not only is it important, but not only what you eat, but in learning how to eat and
Right.
balancing it all out. I think what you've done today is taken the time to make us a little clearer on that, and we see how important it is to get with a good nutritionist and at least to learn what we're eating. This whole idea of charting things out is phenomenal to me. I know I did it once with you,
Yes.
and I started looking at it saying, I didn't realize
Scary.
it was you. It is scary.
It's
Once you
scary.
do it, you realize that it's scary.
Right. The best part of, you know, working with someone and kind of having a food coach is that I will show people their logs, you know, their food log when they first come in, and I love doing this. And after 6 weeks or 4 weeks, I go, here was you a month ago, here is you today. And they're like, wow, that's really scary. It is, it's amazing, you know, because people typically don't eat enough, and what they do eat are filling foods. You know, like I had one of your clients you referred to me who came in yesterday, and she wrote down everything she ate. She ate pasta, she ate a little bit of greens, and she ate a ton of fat because she was starving. But she was eating overall maybe 1,000 calories a day. But 70% of it was fat, saturated fat.
That's
Why
incredible.
was she gaining weight? You know, why was she tired? She wasn't eating a good fat. I mean, you know, good fats give you an abundance of energy. It's when I eat my good oils or avocado, I like break out in a sweat. I get really warm. It's like, you know, my furnace is stoked. My body's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really love this. But when I eat saturated fat, I literally become tired. You know, if I do saturated, I get like, oh, time for a nap. You know, it just kind of takes energy out of you. So some foods create more stress on the system than others. And live foods, of course, give you the greatest amount of nourishment and cause cellular combustion metabolism to occur.
That's incredible. You know how much we appreciate you, and it's so nice that you take the time to explain it, and you do it with kindness. Because I'm sure
Kurt.
with the kind of information you're giving, it's got to be appalling and frightening.
Well,
and,
it's
and
hard
yeah.
for people to change lifestyle habits and mindsets. You know, I mean, we've been hearing for, what, 20 years that it's not good to eat fat.
Yes.
So now people are just overdosing on empty calorie foods, you know, carbohydrates and dead foods and sugar and low-fat everything. I tell people you never need to spend another dime on low-fat in your life. If you want fat, eat it. Just make sure you plan for it.
I
You know,
see.
there's a way to balance it. I mean, I love brie cheese. You know, if I'm going to do cheese, I go for the fattiest cheese. I just make sure I make a date with it, and I balance myself out. And once you learn, you know, a little bit of calculations like grams and things like that, it's easy to do. And you can have your cheese and eat it too.
You can have your cheese and eat it too. I
little
knew
nieces out
that was
there.
coming. Cheese and eat it too.
And
That's good.
the other problem is most people don't eat fruits and vegetables. I'm just going to say this real quick, Kurt. I mean, the American Cancer Society did a study, a 10-year longitudinal study, stating that if Americans were to consume 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, they would avoid the 3 most predominant cancers, which is lung, breast and prostate, and colon and rectal.
Really?
9 servings of fruits and vegetables is like 3 pieces of fruit or 4 pieces of fruit, and at least 2 to 4 cups of vegetables every single day. Cancer is going to be the #1 killer in a couple of years. So we better get on board here and, you know, start consuming really good live foods.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
My goodness.
give your body some good antioxidants.
Oh, I almost want to argue with the people out here who are saying wrap up, because
Okay.
there's still so very, very much that I would like to ask you. But
Well, walk into the zone. You know, just get your body balanced and you'll feel 100% better.
you got it. Well, thank you very, very much.
Thanks for
Well,
having
there you
me.
have it. From Deborah Arneson again with a plethora of information. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Kurt Hill. That is wonderful.